Welcome to my channel where I'm going to share with you all my tips and tricks as a pre-med, med school applicant, and eventually as a med student. I'm Giovanna, and today you're going to learn about what costs to expect during the med school application process, as well as the exact costs I had while applying this year. So first off, I'm an incoming med student right now, and I just went through the entire application process. And let me tell you, it is long and expensive. It's important to start thinking about these costs well in advance if you're going to be using your own earnings or savings to pay for everything. But even if you're lucky enough to have someone else help you out, it's important for both you and them to be able to know what to expect. Once you finish completing your application, your first round of costs are going to be when you actually submit your application. So I applied to both AMCAS schools as well as TMDSAS schools, which is the application system for Texas schools. So for the newest 2021 application cycle, AMCAS charges a $170 processing fee that it does include one school with it. And then you have to pay an additional $41 for each school on top of that. I applied to 17 AMCAS schools this past year, and that came out to $810. And keep in mind though that this was for the 2020 application cycle, so those costs are going to be a little bit lower. So if you were to apply in the 2021 cycle, your cost for 17 AMCAS schools would be $826. And if you're applying to TMDSAS schools, they're charging a $185 flat rate fee for the newest 2021 cycle. And that means that you can apply to one school or all of the TMDSAS schools and you'll still only pay the $185 fee. So I applied to 7 Texas schools. But last year, my cost was a little bit lower as well, and it was about, I think it was $165. My total for my primary application submissions came out to $975. I will make an important note here for you to please check out the AMCAS website and look for their fee assistance program. And check to see if you qualify. It is based on your parents' income, but if you do qualify, they will waive the processing fees, as well as allowing you to apply for up to 20 schools at no additional cost. So that's a really good deal if you do qualify for that. So just please make sure to check. So once your primary application has been processed by the individual med schools, that's when you'll start getting emails from each school asking you to complete their secondary application. So your second round of costs will come about when you're getting ready to submit these secondary applications. So this is the point in the cycle where costs start varying. Most schools will send you a secondary application since very few schools actually do filter people out before sending out their applications. I, for example, got a secondary application from every single school that I applied to, and that includes both the AMCAS schools and the TMDSAS schools. And those secondary costs ranged from $30 all the way up to $100 for me, but I know some schools can charge up to $200 for their secondary application fees. So let's say you applied to 24 schools total, like I did. If each school charged the lowest fee of $30 per secondary, then that would amount to about $720. But if each school charged all the way up to the highest of $200, that would amount to $4,800. So that's a huge range. If you're going to budget now, then I would suggest to budget about $100 for each secondary application, meaning about $2,400 for 24 schools. For me, when I added up all of my secondary application fees, it came out to $1,450. So you can see that of the schools I applied to, most were within the lower range of costs. So at this point, if you're me, you've spent $2,425 in the past 2 or 3 months, and all you've got to show for it are like a million essays to write. But then comes interviewing season. So this is where you can get creative on saving money. So I personally was invited to 5 interviews, 2 of which were in Texas, which was pretty far from me, and then 1 of which I decided not to attend because I had already been admitted to a school that I would have picked over this one anyway. So I ended up attending 4 of my interviews. So the first cost that a lot of people forget to factor in is the cost of getting a nice suit and shoes. So if you're anything like me, the only real suit I had was the same mismatching suit that I bought from who knows where about 8 years ago that I used during business club in high school. It's time for an upgrade. I personally found my suit during a really good sale at a Banana Republic outlet store for less than $100, and that included both the blazer and the pants. But you can also find some really good options at your local thrift shop, for example. Regarding shoes, I just polished up the same flats that I had used throughout college and called that good, but definitely invest in a nice pair if yours are battered up or non-existent. So for my first interview in Texas, I spent $325 on a flight and $150 for 2 nights at a hotel that's within walking distance of campus, as well as $60 for an airport shuttle to take me to and from my hotel. I was really surprised to see that the schools were really good about feeding you. So on interview day, I actually got breakfast, lunch, and a lot of snacks from the school. That really helped not have to pay those costs for food, but then I did spend $16 on dinner that night. And since I was staying an additional night at the hotel, I wanted to make sure to get a hotel that would offer free continental breakfast so that I could grab a quick breakfast before heading out to the airport on day 2. So for my second Texas interview, I paid $382 on flights, as well as $180 for 2 nights at a hotel and $18 for Uber rides. And then I spent $8 on food. And yes, that was at a sit-down restaurant with tip included. It was some of the best food I ever had, and it came out to $8. Texas, thank you. My third interview was within driving distance, and I was able to stay with a friend from college who's a current medical student at the school. So here's a tip, is if you can stay with a friend or someone else that you know in the area, that will save you a ton of extra money. So really, my only costs that day were for gas, which ended up being $50. So for my final interview, I spent $411 on a flight and then $4 on food. Well, specifically an airport bagel, and those, I must tell you, are not very good. But the really good thing about that is that I was able to save entirely on hotel costs because the school did cover the cost for a hotel, and they also took me out to dinner the night before the interview, which was really nice, and it did also save me a ton of extra money. So my total costs for interviewing came out to $100 for the suit, plus $1,246 for transportation, and that included flights, Ubers and shuttles and gas, as well as $330 for hotels, $28 on food. And so that came out to $1,704. So just to recap, my cost for primary and secondary applications came out to $2,425, and my cost for interviewing came out to $1,704. So that came out to a grand total of $4,129. And know that the cost really does vary so much depending on how many schools you apply to, how many interviews you get, and how many interviews you choose to attend. But it's important to start creating a budget based on the number of schools you intend to apply to, and to be realistic of your expectations of what these costs could potentially add up to. And if you'd like to know more about budgeting for med school, or ways to minimize costs during the application cycle, or about applying to Texas schools as an out-of-state applicant, please leave a comment down below, and I'd love to answer any of your questions. And make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to watch my next video on some important tips for a successful interview day. Bye everyone!